This is a good time of year for telling stories. If we were a little further north, we might sit by the fire as we told tales on a winter night or a winter day. But wherever I am a lover of stories. So today, as we celebrate the winter solstice, I will not give a sermon. What I will do is tell you stories related to the sun. The stories and the explanations that I am using today are taken from E.C. Krupp's book, Beyond the Blue Horizon. The sun rises in the east. We all know that. But we city and suburban folk who no longer watch the sky closely may not have paid attention to the fact that the sun does not always rise in the same place in the east. The northernmost sunrise occurs on what is called, here in the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice in June. The winter solstice sunrise occurs at the southernmost point of the sunrise. Solstice means sun stands still. And if you watch the sunrise for several days in a row, before, at, and after the solstice, you will notice that the rising point scarcely changes over the course of those days. December 25th was the winter solstice in the calendar Julius Caesar established in Rome in 46 before the Common Era. Because of an error in Julius Caesar's calendar, the winter solstice now usually falls on December 21st. Emperor Aurelian established the sun cult as the official religion of Rome in 274 of the Common Era, when the solstice was already 2.5 days early because of the calendar error. But December 25th was the day, and it was hard to abandon that date. It was so well known. And so it became Dies Natali Invicti, the birthday of the unconquered sun. The Luiseno Indians in Southern California tell a creation story that is really a story about the seasonal movements of the sun and how it moves throughout the sky during the seasons. Before the sun, the world created by Mother Earth and Father Sky was still dark. Those who lived there in the beginning, the first people, kept bumping into one another. And it was one of them who had the bright idea of making a sun. That was a great start, but they also had to get the sun into the sky. So the same person also wove a net of red milkweed twine, the Milky Way, and asked everyone to meet. They stretched the net out on the ground, put the sun in the middle of it, and with magic chants and gestures, bounced it into the heavens. At first, the sun went north, but everyone agreed that wasn't right. They put the sun back down on the net and tried again. This time, the sun went south, but came back again. So they made another attempt to launch him into the proper orbit. This time, he went a little bit to the west and returned again. Another snap of the net sent the sun into the sky again, and this time they got him in the east, where they agreed that he belonged. With a little more effort, their songs put the sun on a yearly course that never followed a straight line, but carried him south and north in different seasons. The sun not only helps us tell the days and the seasons, it also helps us organize space, or at least some of us. I'm directionally challenged. In Snorri Sturluson's account of the Norse creation myth, there are no directions in the very beginning. That's because there's no world. At first, only Fumblevertur, the mighty winter of nothingness exists. The universe is a gaping abyss. Within this void, however, a cosmos is created from the corpse of a frost giant whose body has condensed out of the vapor and the fog. The giant's name is Ymir, and he is killed by Odin and his two brothers. Together they fashion the world from his cadaver. The giant killers make the sky out of Ymir's skull and station 4 dwarfs at the world's corners to hold up the heavens. The names of the dwarfs are the same as the directions where they stand: Ostri, east; Vestri, west; Nordri, south; Nordri, north, and Sudri, south. The link between the sun's daily movement in these directions is revealed by the original meaning of each name. Ostri means glowing bright, burning, a nod to sunrise and dawn. Vestri refers to evening. Sudri seems to mean the brilliant, and if so, probably indicates the sun's high point when it crosses due south. And finally, Nordri means away, below, and suggests the sun's passage at night through the underworld. The road of the dead that leads to this realm, according to the Norse, goes north. There are stories from all cultures about the sun, for it is something common to us all everywhere. Even the nursery tale, Little Red Riding Hood, conceals a story about the sun. The crimson cowl Red wears should make us a little suspicious. She's a young thing, the morning sun, on a journey, the sun's daily path to old age, her grandma's house, the sunset, where she is devoured by the wolf, darkness. Red Riding Hood emerges, sunrise, from the wolf's gullet, however, and is reborn to carry her basket of goodies for another day. The Egyptians saw scarab beetles rolling a ball of dung in front of them and dropping it into the earth. They connected that with the sun moving across the sky and dropping into the earth. The Egyptians did not know that the scarab beetle laid eggs in the ball of dung it rolled. They thought the ball was like a seed from which new beetles sprouted. The Egyptian name of the solar scarab is Kefri, which means coming into being or self-created. The Egyptians connected the movement of the ball of dung and the coming from it of the new beetles with the way the sun sank in the western horizon and came back anew each morning. And so the Egyptians tucked stone scarabs into the folds of their mummies. It was a symbol of rebirth. They hoped that they themselves would return to life after death, as the sun does. I have a scarab bracelet. I didn't know its meaning. Stories of the sun are told not just about individual death connected with its daily dying and rising, but also of the winter death of the earth as the sun moves through the seasons. Mistletoe is associated with the sun. Its berries are yellow-white. If you cut a branch of mistletoe, after a few months, it will turn entirely golden yellow. In a Norse myth, it is the mistletoe that kills the god Balder. At Balder's birth, all creation had promised not to harm him. All creation, that is, except the mistletoe, which had been too young to make the pledge. The gods liked to play a game with Balder. They'd have him stand in front of him and they'd throw all manner of things at him, rocks, arrows, whatever, just to have them fall right down in front of him without ever touching him, fulfilling their pledge. But this annoyed the trickster god Loki. And so he gave the blind god Hoder a sharpened sprig of mistletoe and helped him aim. The mistletoe struck Balder's heart and killed him. Hel, the goddess of the underworld, claimed Balder as her own. But she said that if all creation would weep for him, she would return him. And all creation wept except for one giantess, who was the trickster god Loki in disguise. And so Balder must remain part of the year with Hel. In Scandinavia, mistletoe was gathered at Midsummer's Eve, and bonfires, known as Sweden as Balder's balefires, were lit that same night. It has been argued that the mistletoe was both the agent of Balder's death and the repository of his life. And that makes sense if the mistletoe is symbolic of the sun and Balder is symbolic of the earth. It is at summer solstice that the sun turns once again toward winter and death, and at winter solstice when the sun turns toward summer and renewed life. The year and its seasons are an essential component of the natural order of things. Our ancestors judged it necessary to act in harmony with the natural order. It was the foundation of all behavior, and they saw the laws, taboos, and rules of conduct of society as natural extensions of the natural order. For this reason, they sometimes called on the seasonal components of the natural world to uphold the social and ethical order of their communities. And that is what happens in this Slavic fairy tale. And my pardon to all of you stepmothers, but it's a fairy tale. It was bad enough when Marukla's own mother had died and her father remarried. But now that Marukla's father was also gone, she was just excess baggage around her stepmother's house. Far prettier than her sister Helen, Marukla incited only jealousy and hatred at home. And for her good temper, she was assigned all the hardest work. Cleaning the rooms, washing the laundry, cooking the meals, spinning thread, weaving cloth, sewing clothes, carrying hay, milking the cow, all kept her busy. But despite all her burdens, she grew more attractive each day while her pouting sister grew uglier. Under these circumstances, Helen's marital prospects were looking pretty grim, and her mother figured something had to be done to eliminate the competition at home. So she starved Marukla, abused her, and did all she could to make the girl miserable. But despite it all, Marukla became lovelier and more pleasant. On the other hand, the more Helen received, the more she demanded, and sometimes her demands were outrageous. In the middle of one year's winter, Helen decided she would like violets and ordered Marukla to find some in the nearby mountains. Well, Marukla normally was rather good-natured. At this point, she did protest, saying that it's the middle of winter. There are no violets out there. But Helen insisted, saying that she would kill Marukla if she did not bring her violets. Helen and Marukla's stepmother drove her out the door of the house and told her to not come back until she had violets. Hungry, freezing, and wretched, Marukla wandered into the woods, certain that she would die. But far from the cottage and well into the night, she noticed a light at the top of the mountain. And as she reached the peak, she saw a large, inviting fire. 12 stone blocks were arranged in a circle around the fire. The blocks were seats for 12 strange individuals. The hair of 3 was white with age, The next 3 were mature, but not old. The next 3 were young, and the last 3 were children. They were the months of the year. Marukla asked politely if she might warm herself by the fire. Sachene, January, invited her to do so and asked her what brought her out on such a night. When she told her sad tale of being out looking for violets upon pain of death in January, Sachene stepped down from the highest stone block and invited Brazene, March, to take his place. As Brazene took the chair and waved his wand over the fire, a moment of spring occurred. Grass grew and violets bloomed. Marukla was advised to gather her violets quickly as Sachene needed to resume his seat. Marukla brought the violets to Helen, but the next day, Helen demanded strawberries and sent Marukla again packing to get them on pain of death. Well, you know where Marukla went and to whom she appealed. Sachene gave the seat to Chaverne, June, for a moment, and Marukla collected strawberries and took them to Helen. Oh, but you know where this is going. The next day, Helen demanded apples, and off Marukla went again. But this time, when Sachene exchanged places with Zare, September, Zare only allowed Marukla to collect 2 apples. When Marukla took them to Helen and her stepmother, they tasted them and wanted more. So they went up into the mountains themselves looking for them. They found the fire in the months of the year, but they just barged in without asking. When Sachene asked why they had come, they told him to mind his own business. Eventually, they left the fire in search of fruit and flowers. Sachene frowned, and waving his wand over his head, he shut down the fire and summoned heavy clouds, snowfall, and chilling winds. Neither Helen nor the stepmother ever returned to the cottage. Marukla, however, inherited the house, the field, and the cow. In time, she married an honest farmer, and as with all fairy tales, they lived happily ever after. In Slavic fairy tales, the year was sometimes personified, as in the story of Marukla, with a circle of 12 months, seated around a fire on a mountaintop. It was said that an old man lived in that fire. He was bald and had a long white beard. Said to know everything, he favored truth and dispensed justice, and he was known as the King of Time. He lives in fire, rules time, and the months circle round him. He is, of course, the sun. The stories I have shared today are to us stories. We know the sun not as a cosmic ball for the first people to bounce in a net, not as a god or a goddess, not even as a magic fire on a mountaintop, but as a mass of gases and plasma at just the right strength and just the right distance to permit us life. So not quite like our ancestors, but not so unlike them, we celebrate. We take time today to celebrate our sun. Please join me in a guided meditation. Find a comfortable position. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take 6 deep breaths. You are walking down a path in a snowy woods. You can see your breath as you exhale. Up ahead, you see a welcoming bonfire. A woman welcomes you to come sit with her. She has a gift for you. She gives it to you. She invites you to stay and watch the fire with her. You see the sparks shoot up and turn into stars. Make a wish for yourself on the brightest one. Feel the light enter your heart like a seed planted there. Make a resolution that you will bring more light into the world in some way. When you are ready, open your eyes and return to this community and this place. Our closing carol is 235, Deck the Halls. Again, I invite you to stand as you're comfortable.